What's something you still can't believe to this day? What's the SWAT team did when they raided my house? It happened 4 weeks ago when my Aunt Lucia came to visit for Thanksgiving weekend. I had been working on my survival world for about 3 days. When I realized I didn't want to waste time hunting down ender pearls to locate the end portal, I decided to do what any reasonable Minecrafter would do and stayed up for 67 hours straight building a redstone calculator that generated the coordinates to the nearest end portal. By the time it was done, I felt like Albert Einstein, but only smarter. I hoarded some loot in preparation for the journey, gathering weapons, swords, bows, armor, TNT, the works. The next morning, I loaded up my base and left it alone while I went to shower. That's when it happened. By the time I came back into my room, Aunt Lucia was on the phone, pale as a ghost. And when she saw me, she started shaking in fear like I was an IRS auditor. "Don't come any closer! I've already called them." She backed up against the wall. "Called who? Why are you in my room?" I asked her. She pointed at my computer screen with a shaking hand. I saw everything. The coordinates, the weapons, the TNT. "You're planning something horrible. What are you talking about?" I looked at my screen. Just my Minecraft world paused where I'd left it. She pulled out her phone, showing me screenshots. "These numbers match Lakeview Elementary School. It's 87 miles from here, and you have bombs." "Lakeview? I don't even know what that is. Those are just— I went through your YouTube history," she screamed over me, now on the floor in panic. "Oklahoma City bombing documentary, World Trade Center attacks, Columbine timeline. You went through my computer?" That's my history homework, but she was already calling my mom at work. "Sharon, you need to come home now. Your son is planning to shoot and bomb a school. I have proof." She stood up to pace around my room and take pictures of everything. "He's been awake for 3 days straight. That's manic behavior. That's what they do before they snap." "I was playing Minecraft." "What do you mean snap?" Within 20 minutes, my parents rushed in, and Aunt Lucia had already connected her laptop to our TV. "Look at his arsenal. Hundreds of weapons, explosives everywhere, and these coordinates lead directly to an elementary school with 400 students. Those are just chests in Minecraft. This is a training simulator." She clicked to the next slide, my YouTube history. "He's studying real bombings. Timothy McVeigh, Ted Kaczynski, the Boston Marathon. That's literally from Mr. Paxton's class. Mom, tell her, look at this." She showed a screenshot of my Discord. "He's in a group called the Ender Squad. Ender, as in ending lives. They share coordinates and weapon strategies. It's about the Ender Dragon. Dad, it's a Minecraft boss." She pulled out her phone to call 911. My dad suddenly lunged at her, trying to grab the phone. "No, don't call them. If they come here, they'll deport me. They'll deport me." Aunt Lucia pulled away, stumbling backward. "Get away from me." She was already dialing. "This is urgent. My nephew has detailed attack plans for Lakeview Elementary. He has coordinates, weapons cache, explosive materials." She was crying now, still backing away from my dad, who stood frozen, his face pale. "He's been studying terrorist attacks for weeks. The FBI needs to know." My dad tried grabbing the phone again, but she pulled away. "Yes, operator. He's been awake for 67 hours straight. He built something he calls a calculator, probably for blast radius. It calculates coordinates in the game. Aunt Lucia, please." She showed my mom more screenshots. "This is a killing simulator." She pointed at my mob farm that auto-killed golems for iron. "This is a bomb-making manual. My Minecraft handbook with the TNT recipe circled." "Mom, those are all from Minecraft." Why isn't anyone listening? The 911 operator must have escalated it because Aunt Lucia suddenly said, "Yes, I'll stay on the line until they arrive." "No, he's here now." "Yes, 11 years old. Lakeview Elementary?" "Yes." "Who's arriving?" "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" My parents looked at each other, then at me, their faces pale. Nobody was answering me anymore. Then we heard it minutes later. Multiple vehicles screeching to a stop outside. Heavy boots on our porch. A megaphone boomed, "This is the police. We need everyone to exit the front door with hands visible. Now." My dad opened the door slowly. SWAT officers in full tactical gear, rifles raised. "Hands where we can see them." Everyone out. We filed out onto our lawn and dropped to our knees while the officers zip-tied our hands shut. All the neighbors were watching. Some were recording on their phones. The tactical team swept into our house. The whole time, Aunt Lucia kept screaming to untie her. She's innocent, that I'm the bomber, not her. 20 minutes later, they untied us and brought us back inside. The lead officer had my laptop on our kitchen table. "Ma'am, you reported an imminent threat to Lakeview Elementary. Show me this evidence." Aunt Lucia, still shaking, pointed at the screen. The coordinates on the screen, the weapons cache, the bombings he researched. I couldn't read the officer's face as he turned to me. "Son, explain what I'm looking at." My voice started shaking. "This is Minecraft, a video game. Video games have been linked to devastating attacks, son," the officer interrupted. I gulped. "How did you get these coordinates?" He asked me. I showed him my redstone calculator. "This looks very intricate," he commented before speaking into his radio. "I have reason to suspect plans for an attack." My knees buckled. Then another officer stepped forward. "Sir," he said to my dad, "the 911 call mentioned you tried to prevent reporting. We'll need to see some ID." My dad's face drained of color. The second officer pulled out a tablet and started typing something while dad reached for his back pocket with shaking hands. His wallet slipped through his fingers and hit the floor. He bent down to grab it but dropped it again. Mom reached over and put her hand on his arm to steady him while I stood there watching my whole life fall apart. Dad finally got the wallet open and pulled out his driver's license. The officer looked at it for maybe 2 seconds before handing it back. "I'll need to see additional documentation, sir." Dad's face went from pale to completely white, like someone had drained all the blood from his body. He mumbled something about his green card being in the bedroom safe upstairs. The lead officer nodded to one of the other SWAT guys who followed Dad up the stairs. Their boots made the whole house shake. While Dad was gone, the lead officer turned to us and started pointing at my stuff. "We're confiscating the computer, gaming console, and phone as evidence." Mom asked how long they'd keep everything, and he said it depends on what their tech team finds. 2 officers started unplugging my Xbox and wrapping up all the cords. Another one was putting my laptop in an evidence bag along with my phone from the counter. They even took my old Nintendo Switch from the TV stand. I watched them carry out 3 years of saved games and all my YouTube videos I'd been working on. Dad came back down with a manila folder, and his hands were still shaking, so bad he could barely hold it. The officers took pictures of every page of his documents before handing them back. The second officer kept making notes on his tablet, and Dad just stood there looking like he was about to throw up all over our kitchen floor. They gave us this yellow property receipt with everything they took listed on it. The lead officer said a detective would contact us within 48 hours, and we weren't allowed to leave town. He also said they'd be monitoring our internet activity, so we better not try anything stupid. Then they all just walked out like they hadn't just destroyed our entire house. We stood in our living room looking at the mess they'd made. Every drawer was pulled out, cushions thrown off the couch, books scattered everywhere. The neighbors were still outside with their phones recording everything through our windows. Mom went around closing all the curtains while Dad sat on the couch with his head in his hands not saying anything. Aunt Lucia started talking immediately about how she did the right thing, and any responsible adult would have called 911 911 if they saw what she saw. Mom told her to stop talking, but Lucia kept going. She pulled out her phone and started showing us news articles about school shootings. Look at this one from last month. Started with online threats. I tried one more time to explain that it was just a game, and the coordinates were for finding the end portal in Minecraft. Lucia shook her head and said, "That's what all the shooters say before they snap." Dad suddenly stood up without saying anything and walked straight out to the garage. We heard the door slam. That night was the worst night of my life. Nobody could sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling while I heard Mom downstairs on the phone speaking Spanish to someone, probably my grandma. Dad was pacing back and forth in the living room all night. I could hear his footsteps going from the kitchen to the front door and back again over and over. Every time a car drove by outside, we all froze thinking it might be the police coming back. The next morning around 7, the phone rang, and Mom answered it. I could tell from her face it was bad news. She put it on speaker, and the principal from Lakeview Elementary was saying I was suspended immediately pending a threat assessment. He said it was protocol when there's any reported threat, even if it turns out to be false. Mom tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding about a video game, but he cut her off and said the decision came from the district office, and there was nothing he could do. He said we'd get an email with information about the threat assessment meeting, and until then I wasn't allowed on the school property or at any school events. I wonder why Aunt Lucia jumped straight to terrorism without even asking what Minecraft is. The way she connected random dots, coordinates, TNT, history homework. There's something odd about how quickly she made those leaps in her mind right now. Mom hung up and just stared at the phone. Dad was still in the same clothes from yesterday, sitting at the kitchen table with dark circles under his eyes. Aunt Lucia was in the guest room and hadn't come out since last night. I asked Mom what a threat assessment was, and she said she didn't know, but we'd figure it out. She tried to smile, but I could see she was scared too. The house felt different now, like something had broken that couldn't be fixed. Every time I looked at the empty space where my computer used to be, I thought about my Minecraft world with the redstone calculator I'd spent 67 hours building. All that work just gone, and now I couldn't even go to the school. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew things were about to get a lot worse before they got better. He reached for his wallet with shaking hands and dropped it twice before Mom grabbed his arm to steady him. The second officer pulled out a tablet while Dad fumbled through his cards looking for his driver's license. When the officer asked for additional documentation, Dad went completely white and mumbled something about his green card being in the bedroom safe. The lead officer nodded for someone to go with him, and Dad walked down the hallway with an officer following close behind. While they were gone, the lead officer told us they were taking my computer, gaming console, and phone as evidence. Mom asked how long they'd keep everything, but he just said it depends on what their tech team finds. Dad came back with his documents, and the officers took pictures of everything before handing them back. The second officer typed notes on his tablet, while Dad stood there looking like he might throw up. They gave us a property receipt for all my stuff, and said a detective would contact us within 48 hours. The lead officer warned us not to leave town, and said they'd be monitoring our internet activity. After the SWAT team finally left, we stood in our destroyed living room while neighbors filmed us through their windows. Mom rushed around closing all the curtains while Dad sat on the couch with his head in his hands. Aunt Lucia started defending herself, saying she did the right thing, and any responsible adult would have called 911. She kept pulling up news articles about school shootings on her phone, even when Mom told her to stop talking. I tried explaining again that it was just a game, but Lucia said that's what all the shooters say before they snap. Dad suddenly stood up and walked out to the garage without saying anything. The next morning, Mom called Mr. Paxson and put him on speaker while she explained what happened. He promised to email the principal right away about the terrorism research being required homework, but his voice sounded worried like he might get in trouble for assigning that stuff. Dad didn't go to work that day, and his boss called 3 times before Mom finally answered and made up some story about a family emergency. We all knew Dad was terrified ICE would show up at his job if they found out about the raid. That afternoon, a car pulled up, and 2 people from Child Protective Services knocked on our door. They had clipboards and asked about my sleep schedule and whether I had access to weapons. Mom had to take them to the garage and show them our empty gun safe to prove we didn't own any firearms. The CPS worker sat me down at the kitchen table and asked if I ever felt angry or wanted to hurt people. I told her I just wanted to beat the Ender Dragon in Minecraft, but she kept writing everything down even though she clearly didn't understand what I was talking about. She asked about my friends and whether I'd been bullied at the school and if I'd ever thought about hurting myself or others. Meanwhile, our next door neighbor had already posted a video of the raid on Nextdoor with the caption asking what we were hiding. Mom showed me her phone later, and there were hundreds of comments from people in our neighborhood speculating about what happened. Some people said they always knew something was off about our family, and others were sharing screenshots from the video. My friends started texting to ask if I was okay, but Mom had taken my phone so I couldn't respond to anyone. She showed me one message from a kid whose parents said he couldn't talk to me anymore. That evening, the detective called and scheduled an interview for tomorrow at the police station. Mom asked if we needed a lawyer, and he said we were free to bring one, but it was just a preliminary interview to clear things up. After dinner, Mom spent hours calling legal aid organizations, but most were closed or had month-long waiting lists. She left voicemails at 5 different places before finally finding a clinic that offered a phone consultation for the next morning. While she was on the phone, Aunt Lucia sent a long email to our entire extended family explaining how she prevented a tragedy. She included all her screenshots of my Minecraft world and YouTube history as proof that she saved lives. Mom's phone started blowing up with calls from worried relatives asking if I was really planning to attack a school. My grandma called crying, and my uncle wanted to know if we needed money for a lawyer. The next morning, at the police station, they took us to a small room with a metal table and uncomfortable chairs. The detective had a notebook and asked me to explain exactly what Minecraft was and how it worked. I drew diagrams of the nether portal and end portal on a piece of paper, trying to show how the coordinates work in the game versus real life. He kept asking why I needed TNT and weapons if it was just a game. I explained about mining and fighting mobs and how you need armor and swords to survive at night. He wrote everything down but kept asking the same questions different ways like he was trying to catch me lying. Mom showed him the email from Mr. Paxson about the homework assignment, and the detective made copies of everything. After 3 hours of questions, he said they were still analyzing my hard drive and would know if I was lying about anything. Mom asked when we'd get my stuff back, and he said it could be weeks or even months. The detective pulled out another folder and spread out printed screenshots of my YouTube history. He pointed at the Oklahoma City documentary and asked why an 11-year-old would watch videos about bombings. Mom dug through her purse and pulled out the crumpled assignment sheet from Mr. Paxson's class that listed all the documentaries we had to watch for our terrorism unit. The detective made copies of it, but his face stayed suspicious like he thought we made it up. Then he asked about the Ender Squad and wanted to know who else was in this group. I told him it was just 5 kids from different schools who played Minecraft together, and we mostly talked about finding diamonds and building farms. He wrote wrote down their usernames when I remembered them, and asked for their real names too, but I only knew 2 of them. We sat in that small room for 3 more hours while he kept asking the same questions different ways. Finally, he stood up and said their tech team was taking apart my hard drive, byte by byte. He said if I was lying about anything, they'd find it and things would get much worse. Mom's hands were shaking when she asked again about getting my computer back. The detective shrugged and said these investigations take time, could be weeks or months before we hear anything. We drove home in silence, and I could see Mom checking the mirror every few seconds like she thought we were being followed. That evening while we were eating leftover pizza, the phone rang and Mom talked to someone for 20 minutes. It was a legal aid lawyer who explained the difference between what the school could do and actual criminal charges. She told Mom to write down everything that happened and save every email and not to talk to anyone about the case without a lawyer there. Mom hung up and started making a list on a yellow notepad while Dad sat at the table staring at nothing. The next morning, Mom's phone buzzed with an email from the school. They scheduled a threat assessment meeting for next week with the principal and the school psychologist and the resource officer. The email had a whole list of questions attached about my mental state and whether I had friends and if there were problems at home. Mom printed it out and started filling in the answers, but kept stopping to cry. Dad finally went back to work on Wednesday, but came home after lunch looking sick. He told Mom that everyone kept asking about the police cars and someone made a joke about him being a terrorist. He said he almost quit right there, but we need the money for lawyers. Mom rubbed his back while he sat at the kitchen table with his head down. The school wanted a written statement from me explaining exactly what happened. I sat at the computer for hours trying to write it, but everything sounded crazy when I read it back. How do you explain a redstone calculator to people who think Minecraft is for training killers? I wrote 5 different versions and deleted them all. Mom tried to help, but she didn't understand the game either, so her suggestions made it sound worse. That night, Mom got a Facebook message from someone I didn't know. It was the Discord moderator for the Ender Squad, and he'd heard what happened from one of the other kids' parents. He sent Mom screenshots of our actual conversations, which were all about diamond mining and villager trading, and whether skeleton spawners were better than zombie spawners. He explained that the server had strict rules against talking about real violence, and anyone who broke them got instantly banned. Mom printed everything out and added it to her growing folder of evidence. 2 days later, the doorbell rang, and it was CPS again, but this time they brought someone new. The woman introduced herself as a technology specialist, and said she actually played Minecraft with her kids. Mom's filling out mental state questions while crying? That seems like exactly the kind of thing that makes the situation look worse than it is. The technology specialist from CPS actually playing Minecraft feels oddly convenient. I'm curious if she really understands the game. She sat down at our kitchen table and looked through all of Aunt Lucia's screenshots while the other CPS worker took notes. The tech specialist pointed at each image and explained what it really showed. She said the TNT was just pixels for mining, and the coordinates were clearly for the game world, not real locations. She told her supervisor it was obviously just normal gameplay and nothing dangerous. The supervisor wrote something in her folder and said they'd include this in their report. The threat assessment meeting came faster than I wanted. We sat in the principal's conference room while 3 adults stared at me across the table. The principal asked about my friends and I told her I had a few, but mostly I liked playing games online. The psychologist wanted to know about my grades, which were mostly B's, except for math where I had an A. She asked if I felt angry at the school or if anyone bullied me. I said no, but she kept asking the same thing different ways like the detective had. The resource officer asked if I understood why adults were worried. I tried to explain that the coordinates matching the school was just bad luck, but he didn't look convinced. Mom handed over Mr. Paxson's letter about the homework and the Discord screenshots. The principal read through everything while we sat there sweating. After an hour, they said they'd make a decision about my return to the school within a few days. We walked out past the secretary who used to smile at me, but now wouldn't look up from her desk. 3 days later, they called us back for another meeting, but this time the school psychologist was there too. She had glasses that kept sliding down her nose, and she pushed them up every few seconds while looking at her notes. She asked if I understood why the adults were worried about the coordinates matching the school. I tried to explain again that it was just random bad luck that my game coordinates happened to match a real place. The calculator just found the closest stronghold in the game world, and I had no idea Lakeview Elementary even existed until Aunt Lucia started screaming about it. She nodded and wrote something down, but then asked the same question 5 different ways, like she was trying to catch me lying. After 20 more minutes of questions, she finally said she believed me, but they still had to follow their safety protocols. The principal pulled out a typed paper and slid it across the table to my mom. They were creating a safety plan that meant I had to see the school counselor every week for the whole rest of the school year. I couldn't use any computers at the school, except in the library where the librarian could see my screen at all times. The principal would check in with me every Monday morning before first period, and I had to eat lunch in the counselor's office for the first 2 weeks back. They said I could return to the school next Monday, but I'd be under strict monitoring, and any problems would mean immediate suspension. Mom asked if this would go on my permanent record, and they said it depends on how the rest of the year goes. When we got home, Mom went straight to her laptop and started searching for something. She found the police department website and clicked through different pages until she found a form for requesting body camera footage. She filled out all the boxes with our case number and the date of the raid and her contact information. The website said it takes 30 days to process requests, and they might deny it if there's an ongoing investigation. Mom printed 3 copies and said she'd mail one and drop one off in person tomorrow just to make sure they got it. That evening, our home phone rang, and Mom answered it. Her face got tight, and she hung up without saying anything. She told us it was a reporter from the local news asking for our side of the story because someone had leaked details about the SWAT raid. Mom deleted the voicemail and told me and Dad not to answer the door for anyone we didn't know. She put a sign on our door that said no soliciting and no media. The next morning, 2 more reporters called, and Mom unplugged the phone completely. By Friday, the rumors at the school had gotten completely out of control. Mom got an email from another parent saying kids were telling everyone I had a kill list with names on it. That was never part of anything, and Mom immediately forwarded the email to the principal. Another parent sent an email demanding that I shouldn't be allowed back at the school at all because their kid was scared. The principal had to send out a message to all the parents saying the situation had been investigated and appropriate safety measures were in place. That weekend, Dad drove 40 minutes to a free immigration clinic downtown. He took all his documents in a folder and waited 3 hours to see the lawyer. When he came home, he looked relieved for the first time since the raid. The lawyer checked everything and said his green card was valid, and there weren't any problems as long as no criminal charges got filed against anyone in our household. Dad made copies of all his papers and put them in 3 different places just in case. Monday morning, the detective called while we were eating breakfast. Mom put him on speaker, and he said they weren't filing any charges, but the case would stay open for 90 days as standard procedure. He warned that any similar incidents would be taken very seriously. carefully, and we should be extra careful about anything that could be misunderstood. Mom asked if this would show up on background checks, and he said only if someone requested the full police records. That afternoon, Mom was on her laptop and suddenly slammed it shut. She showed Dad her phone, and I saw Aunt Lucia had posted on Facebook about how the system was failing to protect children by not taking threats seriously enough. She wrote this long thing about how she did the right thing, and people need to wake up about violence in video games. Some people commented supporting her and calling her brave, but others said she was paranoid and overreacted. Mom blocked her on everything and told Dad's family not to forward any of her posts to us. Sunday night I couldn't sleep because I had to go back to the school the next day. Mom walked me to the front door Monday morning and hugged me extra long. The second I walked into the building, kids started whispering and pointing. In the hallway, someone had stuck a Minecraft creeper sticker on my locker with the word boom written under it in black marker. I tried to peel it off, but it left sticky residue, and you could still see the outline. The principal walked by right then and made the janitor come clean it properly, but everyone had already seen it, and some kids took pictures. During lunch, I had to sit in the counselor's office eating my sandwich while she typed on her computer. After school, I had my first mandatory counseling session. The counselor asked about my sleep and eating habits. I told her I kept having nightmares where SWAT teams burst into my room and zip-tied my hands. She taught me some breathing exercises where you count to 4 breathing in and hold it and count to 4 breathing out. She said we'd practice them every week until the dreams stopped happening. 3 weeks went by with the same routine of school and counseling and waiting for news about my stuff. The detective finally called on a Thursday afternoon while Mom was making dinner. She put him on speaker, and he said the tech team finished going through everything. They found zero evidence of any actual attack planning, just Minecraft saves and homework files and normal kid stuff. He said we could pick up my devices next Monday at the station. Mom thanked him about 5 times before hanging up. That same night, she sat me down at the kitchen table with a printed out schedule. New house rules starting immediately. 2 hours of screen time per day maximum. Gaming only in the living room where she could see the monitor. Door stays open if I'm in my room with any device. No gaming after 8 p.m. on the school nights. I tried negotiating for 3 hours on weekends, but she wouldn't budge. Dad backed her up even though I could tell he thought it was too strict. The next morning, Mom's phone rang during breakfast. Some parent from the Ender Squad was calling. Their kid had been telling them about what happened, and they wanted Mom to know they understood it was all a huge misunderstanding. The kid had explained how our Discord only ever talked about diamond mining and building farms and beating the Ender Dragon, nothing violent or scary. The parent said their family had been through something similar when their older son got reported for a zombie apocalypse story he wrote for English class. Mom seemed relieved to talk to someone who understood. They exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. The school board meeting was that Tuesday night. Mom made me come even though kids weren't supposed to talk. The room was packed with parents and teachers. When they got to new business, the superintendent brought up updating threat assessment protocols. He said recent events showed they needed someone who actually understood gaming and internet culture on the assessment team. Mom raised her hand and stood up. She talked for maybe 3 minutes about our experience, how the misunderstanding could have been avoided if someone had just asked a gamer what those screenshots actually meant. Several parents nodded along. The board voted to add a technology specialist position to the threat assessment team. Monday came, and we drove to the police station to get my stuff back. The evidence clerk had us sign a bunch of forms. When he brought out the boxes, everything was in plastic bags with evidence tags. My computer, my phone, even my Nintendo Switch. We got home and I started setting everything up. That's when I realized they'd wiped everything clean. Factory reset on all devices. My phone had nothing. The tech specialist actually took time to explain what TNT blocks are for in Minecraft. That's interesting. Makes me wonder how many other cases like this she's seen where adults completely misunderstood gaming stuff that kids understand perfectly. My computer was like brand new. All my Minecraft worlds were gone. 3 years of builds. The redstone calculator I spent 67 hours making. My survival world with the massive castle. Everything deleted. I just stared at the empty Minecraft folder. Mom found me crying at my desk and didn't know what to say. She called the therapist from the school who recommended someone who specialized in kids and technology. The new therapist's office had gaming posters on the walls. She actually knew what Minecraft was. During our first session, she asked me to explain what I'd lost. Not just the game saves, but what they meant to me. Hours of work, creative projects. She compared it to losing artwork or music you'd created. She said grief over digital losses was real and valid. We talked about the trauma of the raid too, but she understood why the Minecraft stuff hurt so much. She gave me strategies for dealing with both kinds of loss. Dad had been quiet at work since everything happened. His coworkers kept asking questions and making jokes. Then on Friday, his boss asked him to stay after a meeting. Dad thought he was getting fired. Instead, his boss said the company fully supported him. He knew Dad was a good employee and a good father. He said not to worry about his job no matter what happened with any legal stuff. Dad came home that night actually smiling. First time I'd seen that in over a month. He even played catch with me in the backyard before dinner. The body camera footage finally got released after Mom filed 3 different forms. Our lawyer came over to watch it with her on our laptop. I could hear it from my room even though they tried to keep the volume down. Lucia's voice screaming about bombs and attacks. Me in the background trying to explain it was just a game. The officers discussing whether to call the bomb squad. Mom crying when Dad mentioned deportation. The lawyer said it was good evidence if we decided to pursue anything legally. Mom just wanted it for our records. That weekend, a parent from the school messaged Mom on Facebook. He worked in tech and had heard about what happened. His daughter was in my grade. He offered to help me rebuild the redstone calculator and document it properly this time. Show it was educational and creative. Mom checked him out thoroughly before agreeing. We met at the library Saturday afternoon. He brought his laptop with screen recording software. We spent 4 hours working through the redstone logic. He was impressed by the math involved. He said I had real talent for programming concepts. We recorded the whole build process with commentary explaining each component. He uploaded it to YouTube as an educational video with tags about STEM learning and game-based education. The video started getting views from other Minecraft players who thought the calculator was genius. Monday morning, Mom's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Lucia. She wrote this long message about how she was sorry things got so out of hand. She still thought she did the right thing given what she saw. She said she acted out of love and concern for our safety and the safety of those children at the school. She hoped we could understand her position even if we disagreed with her actions. Mom read it twice, then showed it to Dad. He grabbed the phone and deleted the message. Then he blocked Lucia's number. He said she wasn't welcome in our house ever again. Mom didn't argue. 2 months went by with me following every single rule they gave me. The principal called Mom into his office on a Tuesday morning while I sat in the waiting area. She came out 20 minutes later with paperwork saying my safety plan was getting reduced. I could use computers normally in class again and only needed monthly counselor visits instead of weekly ones. That same week, this kid from my science class asked me about redstone circuits during lunch. He'd seen one of my old YouTube videos and wanted to know how to make an automatic door. I showed him on paper since I still wasn't allowed to bring my my laptop to the school. Word got around that I was good at the technical Minecraft stuff. Kids started coming up to me with questions about command blocks and redstone timers. It was way better than the whispers and stares from before. Mom found this support group online for families who'd been falsely accused of crimes. The first meeting was at a community center downtown on a Saturday morning. Dad didn't want to go, but Mom made him. We sat in a circle with 8 other families while everyone shared their stories. One guy got arrested because his neighbor thought his ham radio setup was for making bombs. Another family had CPS called on them because their kid's drawing of a superhero fight looked violent. Dad finally spoke up near the end and told them about being scared of deportation. His voice shook when he talked about seeing those SWAT officers. Other people nodded and shared similar fears about immigration stuff. We went back every week after that. Mom spent hours filling out forms to get our case records sealed since no charges were ever filed. The lawyer said it would cost $500 we didn't really have. Mom said it was worth it for my future, so she took extra shifts at work. The paperwork went through after 6 weeks of waiting. I started my YouTube channel again, but kept it strictly about building stuff in Minecraft. No weapons, no TNT, no combat at all. Just tutorials on making cool houses and redstone machines. The first video got decent views and mostly nice comments. Some trolls brought up the raid, but I just deleted those and kept posting. 3 months after everything started, life felt almost normal again. We still had the house rules about keeping my door open while gaming. Dad still got nervous whenever he saw police cars driving by, but we were all going to therapy once a week, and it actually helped more than I thought it would. The therapist taught us breathing exercises and ways to handle the anxiety. The school district announced they were bringing in experts to teach staff about video games and internet culture. They held this big training session where someone explained Minecraft, Discord, and streaming to all the teachers. Mom went to the school board meeting where they discussed it. She stood up and told them about what happened to us. Some other parents shared similar stories about misunderstandings with their kids' online activities. I applied to the summer coding camp that focused on game design. The application asked about projects I'd worked on. I wrote about my redstone calculator and explained the whole SWAT situation. 2 weeks later, I got an acceptance letter with a partial scholarship offer. They said my story showed resilience and creativity under pressure. Dad's green card renewal paperwork came up right in the middle of all this. We were all scared it would get rejected because of the police report. The immigration lawyer said everything should be fine since no charges were filed. We waited 3 months for the approval letter. When it finally came, Dad cooked his favorite meal from back home to celebrate. He pulled me aside after dinner and said he was proud of how I handled everything. He apologized for not defending me better when the SWAT team came. He said he was too scared to think straight. I told him I understood. Mr. Paxson pulled me aside after class one day to talk privately. He changed all his homework assignments to include clear explanations about why students were researching sensitive topics. Every assignment now had a parent letter attached explaining the educational purpose. He told me he felt terrible about what happened. He said he should have been more careful about how he structured that assignment. He talked to the principal about it, and they were reviewing all the curriculum to prevent similar problems. The school even added a note to report cards explaining when classes would cover potentially concerning topics. Other teachers started doing the same thing after hearing about our situation. The whole thing changed how the school handled assignments about history and current events. They brought in a consultant to review their policies and make recommendations. Parents got emails before any unit that might involve researching violence or historical tragedies. It took months for everything to settle down completely, but at least people were learning from what happened to us. 6 months went by and things got weird in a good way. Mom was making dinner one night when she randomly started laughing about how Aunt Lucia thought the Ender Dragon was some kind of terrorist code name. Dad joined in from the living room, and pretty soon we were all cracking up about the whole mess. Mom wiped tears from her eyes and said laughing about it helped more than all the therapy sessions combined. The coding camp I got into turned out to be amazing. I walked into the first day nervous about telling anyone what happened, but by lunch, 3 kids were asking me about the SWAT raid story they'd heard from someone's older brother. They thought it was insane, but also understood it wasn't my fault at all. This one kid's dad was actually a lawyer, and when he picked him up one day, he pulled me aside. He said we probably had a really strong civil case against the police department if we wanted to pursue it. He gave Mom his business card and said to call if we ever wanted to talk about our options. Mom thanked him, but I could tell she just wanted to move on. Our family got closer, but in this different way where we all knew we'd survived something crazy together. Every Saturday morning, Dad would come into my room and ask if I wanted to build something in Minecraft. He'd gotten pretty good at it over the months, and even figured out basic redstone circuits on his own. We built this huge castle together with working drawbridges and everything. He'd ask me questions about the game mechanics, and I'd teach him tricks I'd learned. Sometimes Mom would bring us snacks and watch us play for a bit. There's something odd about how the therapist compared losing Minecraft saves to losing artwork. Most adults don't really get that connection, but she instantly understood the digital grief thing. She said it was nice seeing us do something together that didn't involve homework or chores. The last counseling session at the school was basically just a formality at that point. The counselor asked how I was feeling about starting high school next year, and I told her I was actually excited. She looked through her notes from all our sessions and said I'd shown incredible resilience through everything. She signed off on my file as cleared and said she was proud of how I'd handled such a difficult situation. I walked out of her office feeling like maybe I really had gotten through the worst of it. I finally sat down to rebuild my redstone calculator from scratch, since the police had wiped all my worlds. This time I recorded the whole process and explained exactly what each part did and how the coordinates worked. I uploaded it to YouTube with the title explaining it was for finding end portals in Minecraft, nothing else. The video blew up way faster than I expected. Within a week it had thousands of views, and the comment section was full of kids saying adults didn't understand gaming at all. Some shared their own stories about parents freaking out over game stuff. A few even said my story helped them explain Minecraft better to their own families. Reading through all those comments made me realize that maybe going through all that crap actually ended up helping other kids avoid similar problems. Thanks for hanging out and wondering about all this with me today. I had a lot of fun just sharing my random thoughts with you. I'll catch you in the next one. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.